Hello, Leo soul family, you did it, didn't you? Or maybe, you don't quite realize how far you've come yet. Either way, this video is no accident. This is a sacred moment, a cosmic alignment. You were meant to be here, right now. And today, May 2nd, a big reward is making its way to you. Let me ask you something straight from the heart. What if everything you've endured wasn't a delay, but preparation? What if the confusion, the silence, the almosts and not yets, were the universe fine-tuning your frequency for something bigger than you imagined? Because Leo, you haven't just survived. You've transformed. Welcome to Eternal Mindfulness, where astrology meets awakening, and where every message is designed to help you remember what your soul has always known. You are not just worthy of your dreams, you are destined to receive them. This is not just a horoscope. This is a transmission. A realignment. A divine mirror held up to your journey, showing you who you've become after walking through fire. And oh, Leo, you have walked through fire. You've completed a karmic cycle that others didn't even know you were battling. You've faced doubt, endings, confusion, yet you still chose growth, even in silence. And today, the universe wants to reward that quiet courage. Tarot is speaking loudly today. The Star. The Ace of Pentacles. The Emperor. The Lovers. The World. These aren't just cards, they're milestones. They say your wish is already in motion. Your divine gift is unlocking. And when you choose self-love, truly choose it, the doors begin to open. So I want to ask you, what number has been following you lately? 111? 414? 777? Drop it in the comments, not just for fun, but as a sacred signal. When you comment that angel number, you're activating a frequency. You're saying, yes, I'm ready. I accept. And if you've been seeing black cats, flickering lights, repeating dreams, that's not superstition. That's alignment. That's your guides, whispering. Keep going. You're closer than you think. Now, before we dive into your full message, let me take a moment to thank you, deeply and sincerely. Every like, every comment, every subscription you've given to this channel, it's not just data. It's devotion. And I honor that. Thank you for being part of Eternal Mindfulness. Thank you for showing up not just for me, but for you. Your support doesn't just grow this channel, it allows these life-shifting messages to reach the souls that need them most. So I ask you, stay with me until the very end of this reading. Because I promise you, what the universe is about to reveal is not only breathtaking, it's liberating. It's timely. And it's meant just for you, Leo. Take a deep breath. Place your hand over your heart. And say, I'm ready. Now, let's begin. The trials you've recently walked through, Leo, were not meant to break you. They were meant to ignite something ancient within you, something powerful, steady, and far deeper than the eye can see. You weren't just being tested. You were being shaped, molded, tempered in the fires of transformation until all that was false could no longer survive. What remains now is not the same version of you who once doubted their light. What remains is the gold, the part of you that remembers your essence, even when surrounded by shadows. Resilience is more than endurance. It is not the ability to bear suffering with a clenched jaw or to push forward while suppressing emotion. Real resilience, the kind that radiates from your soul, is born when you choose to soften rather than harden. It's when you sit with your pain without letting it define you. It's when you say, even now, I choose love, and mean it, even if that love must begin with yourself. And that, Leo, is what makes you magnificent. Because no one shines quite like you after surviving the dark. There's a deep lesson woven through this phase, and it's one the universe brings back to us again and again. Nothing that's real can be taken away. Just as the moon waxes and wanes but never disappears, just as fire reduces but also purifies, you too are returning to your center, stripped of illusions, but not of your truth. Every challenge was a mirror, asking you gently, will you still believe in your light when no one else sees it? This is why we return to the breath. To presence. To that quiet, unwavering stillness within, not as a denial of the storm, but as a space that cannot be shaken by it. In the quiet between heartbeats, you can hear a deeper voice. Not your fear. Not your overthinking mind. But the gentle, clear knowing that has always been there. That knowing is your compass now. When the world outside is confusing, filled with contradiction, noise, and opinions, it's easy to feel lost. But you were never lost. You were simply being called inward. And in that silence, your inner guidance becomes louder. Not louder in volume, louder in certainty. This is the part of you that doesn't need proof to trust. It simply knows. This is the truth the ancients understood when they said, the answer is not outside, it is inside. The world can be in chaos, and yet the flame within you can still burn steady. This is your power. And this is your moment to let it shine. The number 8, which vibrates through your chart this month, isn't just a symbol of infinity or abundance. It speaks to your ability to regenerate. To rise. To begin again with more wisdom, more presence, more grace. It flows like the breath, inhale, exhale, return. Just like the sun, rise, set, return. And just like you, Leo, burn, rest, rise again. So if you've questioned yourself lately, if you've wondered whether you're still on the right path, know this, the fire hasn't consumed you. It has refined you. You are not behind. You are precisely where you are meant to be. And soon, what once felt like effort will begin to flow. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Let yourself shine now. Not with force, not with fear, but with truth. You've earned the right to take up space. You've earned the right to lead. You've earned the right to live unafraid of your brilliance. The next chapter doesn't require the old armor. Just your presence. Just your trust. Just your light. When the star appears in a reading, it's never subtle. It arrives as a quiet yet unmistakable signal that something sacred within you has been heard, that your deepest longing, even the one you've been too humble or too afraid to speak aloud, is finally aligning with the current of life. It's not a prediction, it's a reflection. A confirmation that the energy you've been nurturing inside, sometimes patiently, sometimes with uncertainty, is finally beginning to materialize. But what makes this moment especially powerful is not just that something is coming to you. It's that you're finally open to receive it. The Ace of Pentacles and Ace of Cups, together with the Star, form a rare trinity. It suggests that what you're manifesting isn't limited to just one area of life. It's emotional fulfillment and material abundance, two rivers that once felt separate, now beginning to merge. The key that unlocks this convergence is subtle, yet profound: your willingness to love yourself without condition. Not as a reward for success. Not as a backup when others don't. But as a starting point, a sacred agreement with your own heart that says, I will be kind to you first. This isn't just about feeling good. It's about changing your energetic blueprint. When you turn inward with compassion, when you soften the grip of judgment on your own thoughts and behaviors, you begin to align with a frequency that calls in wholeness. Not perfection, wholeness. And from this place, what you desire no longer feels distant. It feels natural. Like the blooming of a flower you've watered daily, even when you weren't sure it was growing. In teachings about the nature of suffering and the path to freedom, there's often a reminder that joy is not something we chase, it's something we allow. The very act of letting go of resistance, of no longer demanding that life meet your expectations on your timeline, becomes the spaciousness through which unexpected blessings can flow. It's not passivity, it's trust. And trust, unlike hope, is rooted in presence. It asks, what if I'm already being guided? And gently answers, you are. When we speak of abundance in this space, whether through the image of a golden coin in the Ace of Pentacles or the overflowing chalice of the Ace of Cups, we're not simply referring to money or romance. We're speaking of alignment. Of your inner and outer life no longer pulling in different directions. Of choosing the kind of nourishment that supports your entire being. It's less about having and more about being. Being available for grace. Being spacious enough to receive joy without guilt. Being rooted enough to welcome love without fear. That's why the simple act of placing your hand over your heart each morning and affirming your readiness to receive is so much more than a feel-good ritual. It's a declaration of alignment. It reminds your nervous system that safety can be found within. It teaches your mind that worth is not a future achievement, but a present reality. It tells your energy that you're done hiding from your own light. Because the truth is, you've never needed to seek the light outside of you. You've been the light all along. The wish you made under the stars wasn't a plea for something external. It was a recognition that you are ready now. Not when you're healed. Not when you've earned it. Now. And now, the universe is responding. Not by suddenly giving you something you didn't already have, but by reflecting your readiness back to you in the form of opportunities, clarity, and love that feel like home. There comes a moment when clarity doesn't knock gently. It arrives like a gust of wind, sweeping away every excuse, every fear disguised as logic. This is that moment, Leo. The presence of the Knight of Swords and the Lovers is no coincidence. Their energy isn't about external decisions or dramatic crossroads. It's an invitation to choose yourself, fully, unapologetically, without the need for validation or perfect timing. Because what you've been waiting for may actually be waiting for you to say yes. We often hold back because we're taught that readiness comes from having everything figured out. But true readiness is a quiet inner shift. It's not when the path is clear, it's when you are. The Knight of Swords doesn't ask if you feel prepared. He moves because he trusts that action itself will carve the path. When you stop hesitating, life stops delaying. And that's what's being asked of you now, to trust that movement, even imperfect, is more powerful than standing still and overthinking. The Lover's card here doesn't necessarily point to romance, although that may be part of your story, but rather, it reflects integration. The union of your higher knowing and your lived experience. It's the merging of head and heart. You've gathered insight, wisdom, and truth. Now, it's time to act in alignment with them. Not out of impulse, but from deep inner clarity. There's a well-known teaching that the biggest obstacle to liberation is hesitation. Not because waiting is wrong, but because waiting often comes from fear, the fear of loss, rejection, or failure. But in reality, indecision is a form of suffering. It stretches discomfort over time, turning small moments of truth into extended periods of inner conflict. The longer you resist action, the heavier your potential begins to feel. And this heaviness doesn't come from life denying you, it comes from you denying yourself. When you act from love, not from lack, urgency, or wounded pride, the outcome becomes secondary. Because even if things don't unfold exactly as expected, you know you honored your truth. You stood in integrity with your soul. And that kind of courage doesn't go unnoticed. Life rewards alignment. It reflects bold, heart-centered choices with growth, expansion, and yes, success. This is where the Six of Wands comes in, affirming that recognition, progress, and even celebration are ahead. But they aren't random rewards. They're the natural result of showing up. They arrive not because you hustled harder, but because you finally stopped shrinking. You stepped into the arena. You let yourself be seen. That's the energy that magnetizes opportunity. So ask yourself, gently but honestly, what have I been postponing, not because I don't care, but because I care too much? What truth have I swallowed because I feared it would disrupt what's familiar? And what would shift if I simply stopped asking for permission to be fully myself? Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make this the moment. Let action become your teacher. You won't always get a guarantee, but you will get feedback, momentum, and freedom. Remember, the universe doesn't respond to wishful thinking, it responds to movement, clarity, and commitment. You're not here to live a life of almosts. You're here to live boldly, authentically, now. So if you've been searching for a sign, this is it. Not just from the cards, but from your own readiness, knocking gently from within, asking only one thing. Will you choose yourself this time? There are moments in life when something within you quietly shifts, and though no one else may notice, you know, something has ended. Not in a dramatic or chaotic way, but with the subtle finality of an exhale after a long-held breath. This is what the World card speaks to. It doesn't shout. It affirms. It tells you that you've completed something meaningful, even if the external world hasn't quite caught up yet. That completion may have taken the shape of a relationship you finally released, a job that no longer fits your values, or a belief about yourself that kept you small for far too long. Whatever it was, its season has passed. And what comes next is not about chasing what's new, it's about returning to what's real. The Queen of Wands beside it carries the energy of someone who has been through transformation and now stands unafraid in her own fire. She doesn't seek attention, her presence naturally commands it. She doesn't force momentum, her alignment with her own power creates it. This is the version of you that has emerged from the ashes. Not someone new entirely, but someone more integrated, more honest, more fully expressed. The world around you may try to keep you in an older version of yourself, out of habit, out of familiarity. But your inner world has shifted, and that shift is irreversible. Completion is often misunderstood. We're taught to celebrate beginnings, the new job, the fresh relationship, the bold leap forward, but we rarely pause to honor the quiet closures that make them possible. Yet nothing can truly begin until something else is allowed to end. And sometimes, what needs to end isn't just a situation, but the identity we created to survive it. A part of you may have spent years holding everything together, being what others needed, proving your worth in spaces that never really saw you. That part can now rest. You've outgrown the version of yourself that was born in response to pain. What's rising now is born from presence, and presence doesn't need to prove anything. The number 21 that marks the world is not just symbolic of completion, but of return. A return to wholeness. A full circle. In teachings about liberation, there is the idea that freedom comes not from escaping the world, but from understanding it deeply, from realizing that the journey is not linear, but circular. That every path you've walked, every challenge you've faced, has brought you back to yourself. Not the self that was shaped by circumstance, but the self that existed before fear and doubt ever took hold. You don't have to fight to move forward. You just have to release what no longer aligns. And releasing doesn't mean forgetting. It means recognizing that you are no longer bound to a past version of you. You are no longer required to carry lessons that have already been learned. What you carry now is wisdom, and wisdom doesn't rush. It walks with clarity and grace. So if you've been sensing that something is shifting, you're not imagining it. The signs, the numbers, the repeating symbols, the intuitive nudges, they're simply reflections of what your soul already knows. That this cycle is complete. That you are ready. That what's coming next won't require you to fight your way in, but to allow your way forward. Take a moment. Place your hand over your heart. Ask yourself gently, what part of me is ready to rest? What truth am I finally willing to live out loud? This next chapter doesn't demand more of you, it asks for less. Less pretending. Less holding back. Less clinging. More of you. More of your light, your voice, your presence. You're not here to keep repeating what's finished. You're here to embody what you've become. The cards that appear now, Ace of Cups, Two of Pentacles, and the High Priestess, offer more than a moment of reflection. They create a mirror for the emotional intelligence you've been cultivating through every choice, every hesitation, every quiet moment you spent trying to feel your way through the unknown. What they reveal is not indecision in the traditional sense, but a moment of sacred pause, an inner crossroads where you're being asked to move beyond logic and into trust. Not the kind of trust that needs proof, but the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that whispers, "You already know." Your heart knows more than your mind can explain. That's not a flaw, it's a compass. The Ace of Cups signals the presence of something beautiful already forming in your energy, an invitation to connect more deeply, to feel more freely, to love more fully. It could be the beginning of a new relationship, or a gentle return to yourself. But no matter what form it takes, the energy is the same. It's an opening, a blooming. And it asks only one thing in return: that you stop filtering your desires through fear. At the same time, the Two of Pentacles reminds us of the constant dance between obligations and dreams. Between what's expected and what's true. You may be holding too much, juggling between roles, between stories, between the version of you others expect and the version that's quietly been evolving within. The invitation here isn't to abandon responsibility. It's to find rhythm. To notice where the weight feels heaviest, and ask whether it still belongs in your hands. This is where the High Priestess becomes your greatest ally. She speaks without speaking. She teaches through silence, presence, and inner listening. She does not rush. She does not argue. She knows. Her presence in your reading is not just a suggestion, it's a reminder that your most important decisions cannot be made with noise. They must be felt in stillness. Because clarity rarely comes when you push for it. It emerges when you make space for it. In practices of mindfulness and inner awakening, there is an understanding that the heart is not just an emotional center, it is an instrument of perception. It feels truth long before the mind can justify it. This is why so many of life's biggest turning points don't come with guarantees, only gut feelings. And more often than not, the first feeling is the truest one. But how often do we silence it in favor of safety? How often do we talk ourselves out of something our soul already agreed to? Now is not the time to betray yourself for certainty. Now is the time to trust what makes your chest rise with excitement, your breath slow with peace, your eyes light up without effort. Whether this choice is about love, career, lifestyle, or healing, you are not being asked to calculate, you're being asked to feel. To return to what feels like you, not what feels like control. So ask yourself, what decision brings me closer to my own aliveness? What would I choose if I wasn't afraid of making the wrong choice? The real measure of alignment is not whether it pleases everyone, it's whether you can live with it and feel free. That's the kind of clarity your intuition offers. And it will never lead you somewhere your soul doesn't belong. Let your choices be a love letter to your becoming. Let your intuition be the signature. You are not meant to live split between the mind and the heart. You are meant to walk as one whole, guided by what is both wise and wildly alive within you. Leo, you've already crossed the threshold. The hardest part is behind you, even if it didn't come with applause or recognition. You did the inner work. You showed up in moments when no one was watching. And that, my dear Leo, is true strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. What's coming next isn't a reward you have to chase, it's an arrival that meets you where you are, because you've finally become someone who's ready to receive. The energy of this moment isn't just about manifestation, it's about alignment. Everything you've been calling in, whether it's love, purpose, healing, or abundance, is beginning to match the version of you that now exists. The King of Pentacles confirms that your foundation is solid. Your presence is magnetic. You've stepped into the kind of leadership that radiates from calm confidence, not control. And the return of the Ace of Cups reminds us that love, real, nourishing, soul-expanding love, is on its way to meet you. Not because you lacked it, but because you've cultivated so much within yourself that it can't help but spill outward and draw more in. So before you move on with your day, I invite you to pause and really feel this. You don't have to earn your light. You already are it. Take a deep breath. Place your hand over your heart. And whisper to yourself, I don't need permission to shine. I am the light. Now ask yourself, if I knew with absolute certainty that the next 3 months would change everything, what would I do differently today? Would I speak up? Rest more? Start writing that idea I keep ignoring? Would I let go of what's been weighing me down, even if I don't have a full plan? What if today wasn't about fixing anything, but finally honoring how far I've come? And while you're here, I'd love to know, what signs have been following you lately? Have you been seeing repeating numbers like 111 or 414? Maybe a symbol keeps appearing in dreams or conversations, like a specific animal, a color, a phrase. These aren't random. They're invitations. Breadcrumbs from the universe guiding you home. Share them in the comments so others can feel the resonance too. You might be surprised how many of us are walking parallel paths. Your journey matters. Your voice matters. And the way you show up for yourself doesn't just shift your life, it sends ripples through the collective. Every time you choose self-trust over self-doubt, you give others permission to do the same. That's how your light becomes legacy. So if this message touched something in you, if even one line felt like a truth you were waiting to hear, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Eternal Mindfulness, and share it with someone you love. Not for numbers, but for connection. For that beautiful, invisible thread that reminds us we're never walking alone. Thank you for spending this sacred time with me. You are not just a viewer, you are a part of this unfolding, of this community, of this cosmic conversation. And I can't wait to see what you manifest next. Stay bold. Stay loving. And above all, stay true. You've already done the hardest work, becoming you. Now let life rise to meet you.